Well, let's talk about the Middle East for the next few minutes, because in Washington, Donald Trump is hosting Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli Prime Minister has today been meeting the US Vice President J.D. Vance. He'll later go on to hold talks with the House Speaker Mike Johnson. We think that's in the next hour or so. Well, last night, President Trump said Hamas appears willing to agree to a ceasefire and that, quote, things are going very well.
Meanwhile, in Israel, there are new signs of what Netanyahu and his government may be planning for the post-war period. Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, says he has asked the military to develop a plan to relocate all Palestinians in Gaza to a camp in the southern city of Rafah. Katz is proposing the creation of what he calls a humanitarian city. It would initially house around 600,000 Palestinians and eventually accommodate Gaza's entire population of over 2.1 million. BBC Verify's Merlin Thomas has been analyzing satellite imagery of the proposed site to assess the level of destruction there.
Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, recently announced plans to relocate Palestinians to this so-called humanitarian city. Legal experts say such a move may be illegal. The proposed camp would be built amid the ruins of Rafah, in southern Gaza, and would begin by moving 600,000 already displaced people from the coast. Katz said development would begin during any potential ceasefire. This area has already suffered a recent wave of destruction. Satellite images show that much of southern Gaza has been devastated by Israeli military operations not just earlier in the war, but increasingly in recent months. For example, here is a look at part of central Rafah on March 29. Some buildings had already been damaged. But by July 4, nearly every structure had been leveled. Elsewhere in the Rafah Governorate, this is Tal al-Sultan on March 29. You can see how 17 months of war left its mark. And in just a few months, nearly all buildings in the neighborhood were reduced to rubble. Even in the Saudi neighborhood of Rafah, which was largely intact as recently as June, recent satellite images show that dozens of buildings have been destroyed. These appear to be demolitions rather than airstrikes, since this area has been under IDF control for some time. Other IDF-controlled areas have seen similar demolitions using controlled detonations. Little is known about what exactly this humanitarian city would involve. Katz said the final goal is to move Gaza's entire population, over 2 million people, into this area. People would be screened for Hamas ties before being allowed in, and once there, they wouldn't be permitted to leave. International legal experts have strongly condemned the plan. One called it illegal on multiple grounds, including war crimes, crimes against humanity, and even genocide. It also violates the right of internal self-determination by restricting Palestinians' freedom of movement and residence. Israel has firmly denied these allegations. When asked about the destruction in Rafah, the IDF told us there is no military doctrine aimed at maximizing damage to civilian infrastructure. They say all action.
That was BBC Verify's Merlin Thomas. Now we turn to Ajit Sanjay, the head of the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territories. He joins us from Amman, Jordan. Question: what do you make of Israel's defense minister's proposed plan? Ajit Sanjay. There are several serious issues here, as your correspondent outlined. Over the past 20 months of conflict, Israel has issued around 121 mass displacement orders. Nearly the entire population of Gaza, about 2.2 million people, has been displaced without access to life-saving essentials like water, sanitation, tents, food, or medical aid. Now, under this new plan, 600,000 people are being squeezed into yet another corner, again without the resources to support them. We fear this could lead to mass detentions, family separations, and violence. Every time people are crowded into confined areas like this, we've seen chaos, and the Israeli Defense Forces have used force, resulting in deaths. Question: so your main concerns are about restrictions on freedom, lack of resources, and risk of attacks. Are those violations of international law? Ajit Sanjay. Absolutely. This is the core issue. The Israeli government says it's offering voluntary departure, but we must be clear with our language. There is nothing voluntary about fleeing a destroyed homeland. Gaza has been turned into a wasteland. Schools, hospitals, water supplies, homes, everything has been destroyed. In that situation, when people have no choice but to flee, that's forced displacement. And forced displacement is a potential war crime. Question: and what about the ceasefire discussions in Washington? Trump says there's hope. What must happen if a ceasefire is agreed upon? Word. Ajit Sanjay. A ceasefire is crucial and it needs to be a long-term one. The High Commissioner for Human Rights has called for the release of hostages, yes, but the focus must shift to rebuilding Gaza. People must be allowed to return home. The UN must be empowered to deliver large-scale humanitarian aid. Question: finally, many aid agencies have said they've run out of words to describe how bad things are in Gaza. Can you put it into words? Ajit Sanjay. Honestly, no. I've appeared on BBC and other media many times over these 20 months. We've used every word: catastrophic, inhuman, beyond comprehension. There's really nothing left to say to capture the scale of suffering in Gaza.